what you're dealing with. Absolute, total rewriting of the planet, of life, of the family, the end of humanity as we know it. That's the New World Order. It's a bold goal. But the British royalty and others 160 years ago went to the top professors in England, we cover it in Endgame, and said, we have a global empire. Show us how to scientifically deconstruct humanity so it's impossible to resist. And the establishment said, well, we're going to study that for you, scientific system. And they wrote hundreds and hundreds of books on it, and that is the system we now live under, and we're very deep into it. And somebody like Ron Paul comes along and says the emperor's not wearing any clothes, like in the Emperor's New Clothes parable. It's a 3-year-old, points out and says the emperor's wearing no clothes. But no one else wanted to admit he was running around in parades in his underwear. That's simplifying the parable. If you don't know it, go look it up. It'll describe what we're dealing with. And they howl with anger and say it is insane. And that, Ron Paul is just a horrible demon who is so extreme. But the truth is, the people running our government, I saw an RT interview a few days ago with Richard Pearl saying, yes, we're getting ready to attack Iran, one of the main architects of the Iraq war. This is a guy who's even been in the New York Times, they've reported, comes up to good-looking women at D.C. cocktail parties. And, I mean, he looks like a 400-pound demon with giant black circles around his eyes. He talks with a lisping bad guy voice. He is everything that evil is, a big demonic wimp. And he comes up to good-looking women and goes from woman to woman and says, I devastated Iraq. I've killed, I basically have killed millions. I'm powerful. And the women almost vomit on him, even though they're, sycophantic globalists. They understand this is disgusting. This is a big, nerdly, obese wimp who couldn't fight his way out of a invisible bag, a non-existent paper bag. He couldn't win a fight with the atmosphere, with a vapor. And he walks up bragging about how he's got power and kills people. I mean, this is what good people's weakness has created. Fat, weak, disgusting, demonic blobs who looks like a overgorged vampire that's like eaten 5,000 children or something. And loves his own voice and has that same Dick Cheney, affected voice, like it's all real calculated and thought out. No, you got a bunch of spiritually blind people, and you're not powerful because you can lead them over the edge of a cliff, boy. Okay? I see you. I see how pathetically weak you are. And I see Chris Matthews and how pathetically weak you are. And when Chris Matthews talked about yours truly, you could see the fear in his eyes. They are scared. You know why? Because they got one that can see. They got one that doesn't care about their torture squads and their death squads, who isn't afraid of them, and who is just standing right in their face. I'm not up here bragging, beating my chest, saying, bring it on. I'm not saying bring it on. I'm bringing it to you. Okay? I'm committed. I got my helmet on, I got my breastplate on, I got my sword, and I'm coming at you, and I'm not going to stop. I'm committed. You know why? Because it's a good feeling. My soul, when I'm not fearful, my soul, when I'm focused and committed for all the innocence that you maggots have fed on, my soul says, good job, and the universe looks at me and says, yes. And I can feel that connection, and that's what it's all about, is the choice I've made. And by the way, folks, if you think you're on the side of good, you think you've made that choice, if you are not compelled, possessed, driven to fight evil and corruption, and when you do wrong, if your conscience doesn't anguish you, then you are not living in the light. And I'm going to stop preaching right there. Just in these times, it comes down to good and evil. It comes down to good and evil. It comes down to good and evil and recognizing evil. The devil's greatest trip and trick was convincing the world he didn't exist. And even if you don't believe in a physical, spiritual entity, the point is that's how evil operates. That's how psychopaths operate, wearing their suits and ties, driving their conservative cars, good at talking to the cops, good at talking to their neighbors, silver-tongued, but they're devils. Yeah, I got wise, as Elvis said. You're a devil in disguise. Oh, yes, you are. And I am coming at you, coming at you, coming at you, coming straight on. And I am here to get others to stand up and to wake up and to activate and come straight on for you. Now, I'm going to get into the incredible record gun sales. I'm going to get into the amazing Iran news. We've got Gerald Celente coming on again to give us, he didn't finish all his trends for 2012. Lindsey Williams coming back on with his trends for 2012 and to take your phone calls. Bob Chapman will have open phones for that. And I go into fourth hour. Gary Franchi, who's running that great TV ad showing the black fella that the racist at the hospital wouldn't take care of him, but Ron Paul would, and then waive the bill. So just, and by the way, I know folks that know Ron Paul, that's what he did. He would volunteer about a third of his time, like you're supposed to, at charity hospitals. By the way, my dad always has done that. And then others don't do what they're supposed to, so he's always mobbed by people wanting free dentistry. But that's what you're supposed to do when you sign up as a physician. And that's what Ron Paul says. Well, that's what we do. In some cases, you know, especially if you work for a company that doesn't even allow you to discount it down to 100% because there's labs and equipment cost and instrument cost and you got to pay your employees. My dad constantly, and I shouldn't say this on air because then more people come, you know, would actually just, and many times just paid for people's health care. You know, actually gone even further. But that's what Ron Paul was well known for, working for $2 a day in a charity hospital. $2 a day. And then separately having his own practice. Okay, that's what humanity's about. And we've got Franchi coming on about that with the super PAC. And I know a lot of our listeners have supported it. But when we come back, I'm going to play the sniveling creature. I almost wish he had the light of burning enjoyment of what he's doing. It's almost more creepy that you can see that Matthews is this empty teleprompter reading Democratic Party operative husk who is just part of the system and is scared and going along with it. Most of these people are just golem-like slaves to the evil. I can't imagine how hellish their lives must be. I cannot imagine what it's like to be on your back 100% to every form of evil. I mean, Chris Matthews is just such a truly psychically and spiritually crippled person. He's a mess. There are people like Pearl who enjoy the evil and are gorged on it, and I can hate them because they're just a pure demonic creature. But when you look at Matthews, he's this person who you know once had some humanity, and you can see the humanity twisted through him. And it's just like a wreck. It's like a burnout old classic car, you know, that like rats are nesting in or something. It's unbelievable. So we're going to play him, and he goes to this lazy-eyed, dim-witted twit with the appeal to authority and ask, is Alex Jones and Ron Paul credible what they're saying? I mean, it is pathetic how weak they are. I mean, these people are sick. I normally wouldn't even get into what old dinosaur propaganda arm zombie programming media engages in. It's not mainstream media. For years, they've had tiny audiences. Infowars.com alone it's roughly 15 times the visitors. You can go to Alexa.com or Google Analytics than MSNBC.com does. Their top shows might have a couple 100,000 viewers. They are a joke. They are a joke. This show has 3 million a day. I've got films online with 35, 40 million views. But when he goes to Iowa for his little meeting, Chris Matthews, there's all these Iowans, well-meaning people, they're like it's exciting and clapping. Oh, my gosh, they're in a little cafe with Chris Matthews. It's so amazing. I mean, they could be on some local radio show and probably have more listeners. But they're all there. They're on national TV. So it's the ghost of what it was to be on television in, say, the 70s, where you had 3 networks and there were probably 40 million people watching the nightly news. And you notice it was the same script on every channel. All Department of Defense, brainwashing, Pentagon, anti-American baloney. The foreign banks took us over a long time ago. All these wars are about destroying America, destroying Iran, destroying all these countries. The bankers sit above it and play us off against each other. And Matthews knows that. He was a top advisor to Jimmy Carter. Matthews knows all of this is pure bull. He knows he's there sniping at a good man like Ron Paul. So they imply he's a big racist all day. And then they shift into, what about the extremism? And he talks to the Republican Party chairman there, who actually overall seemed pretty fair, and said, I don't think it's kooky to like Ron Paul. You know, people have their right to like him if they do. But then he has this other media pundit there with one of the so-called MSM groups. And you just look at her, and I'm not trying to be mean to her, but, I mean, I wonder if she knows how to tie her shoelaces. And then Matthews asked her in this appeal to authority, as they all prop each other up with their little dwindling, tiny remnant audiences, the shadow of what they were. Well, is it credible that he's saying that it's baloney, the whole Iranian plot on the Alex Jones show? And she's like, I don't know if it is. Now, what's funny is, in our article about this, we have Chris Matthews attempts to destroy Ron Paul's campaign, devotes large portion of program to latest smear attempt. You know, they act like we're crazy to say that was staged with the Iranian car salesman. But then we have under it the New York Times saying no one was buying it. Here it is, New York Times. U.S. challenge to explain accusations of Iranian plot in the face of skepticism. And it goes through all these Bush, Clinton officials saying it's bull. It goes through, I mean, Anthony Schaefer, Colonel Schaefer talked to the FBI. They said it was made up. And it turned out it was made up. Again, verified reality. And they say, ooh, Ron Paul, this is crazy. So let's go ahead and go to a small clip of them trying to control reality and dictate to you from their perch that they control reality. And if they say black is white, it is, because Chris, control freak, chicken neck Matthews, said so. Here it is.
Difficulty, of course he would.
Aaron, what about with the young people? Would they still say, well, maybe there is something to these theories?
I don't think they're paying close attention to that thing. But also, look, there are 5 days left until the caucuses. When Herman Cain was being targeted for the allegations of sexual harassment, it took a month for him to fall down in the polls and get out of the race. We only have 5 days left.
So you think bad news about a candidate can't, in the short term, bring him down?
Well, in this point, we're talking about Rick Perry changing his position on abortion and talking about whether or not Romney can now win Iowa. All these other things that are happening, these dynamics the last few days, I don't think that's going to matter.
Let's go to some evidence here. Ron Paul has never endorsed the 9/11 Truther movement explicitly, but when offered the chance to repudiate those theories, the ones like the White House had something to do with blowing up the World Trade Centers, here's what he said. Let's watch as he responds when confronted with a question about 9/11.
Why don't you come out about the truth about 9/11?
Because I can't handle the controversy. I have the Federal Reserve to deal with, and the IRS to deal with, because I just have too many things on my plate.
Ron Paul's also a repeat guest on the radio show of Alex Jones, now who has suggested the United States government was involved in 9/11 attacks. Earlier this month, Ron Paul discussed with Jones the recent plot allegedly by Iranian operatives to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington. Paul called the story that they were out to get the Saudi ambassador a propaganda stunt. Let's listen to the two of them, Alex Jones and Ron Paul.
There was this so-called attempt to kill the Saudi or the Iranian ambassador. You know, that kind of stuff is just way too much.
And even mainstream media had to admit that was totally phony and a pretext to attack Iran.
Yeah, that was the real excuse to blame it on them. It's just another propaganda stunt, as far as I'm concerned.